A big thank you to Jero for sponsoring today's video on Patreon. Alright, this isn't a deck I built for 1v1, but let's try it up against Kozilek here. Yeah, we need some early ramp really. The Mirari's Wake and the Guy's Cradle is tempting, especially with Deep Forest Hermit, but we want to be seeing ramp really. Okay, that is looking quite a bit better, so we'll get rid of the Mororg. Seeing a Voltaic Key from our opponent on turn 1, which is better than fast mana at least. Seeing a Forest now, so we can definitely get these lands in untapped. We'll start off with the tap land to get those have lands in untapped. No turn 2 ramp either, bodes quite well for us from the Kozilek player. And speaking of ramp, there is a Soul Ring for us, so could go for the Krenko to get Summoning Sickness away from that. Drop the Forest into the Soul Ring. Obviously would have liked the Nature's Law there, but with this we could go for Jetmir next turn. And Krenko attacking in isn't the worst, and that's obviously setting up refilling our hand with Shamanic Revelation as well. That's not good, a Mishra's Workshop, but our opponent's still not playing anything amazingly. Only has 2 cards in hand, so must have had to mulligan down. Another land for us. So drop the Sunpetal Grove. We can afford to go for, yeah, the Nature's Law here, as long as we get an untapped land. Get down a Tiger with that, and then that can allow us into green mana for a Jetmir. So we ramp and get our commander down here, and swing in with Krenko, Tin Street Kingpin, which will get its first plus counter, and we'll make a couple of Goblin tokens with that, which are currently 2/1 Vigilance creatures. Hoping we'll be able to swing in with the Krenko again next turn, and then it's definitely a Shamanic Revelation before our opponent decides to wipe the board. Okay, yeah, mulliganing down was not good for our opponent, unfortunately. We'll play another one. Okay, up against the exact same player and the same deck again, and hopefully he plays this out because, like I said, it's not a 1v1 deck. Our opponent, I dare say, has a more well-suited to this format deck than we do. Not difficult to get Kozilek going, really. Has a Manifold Key this time. Okay, there is a Beast Within for us, so I think we'll get down a Soul Ring on turn 1. That's going to be pretty safe against a colourless deck. Seeing an Urza's Workshop, and there, like I said, is the fast mana in the Mana Crypt. Being able to untap that will generate an extra mana with the Manifold Key, so 5 mana, 4 cards in hand. And that takes them into a Thran Dynamo, which will obviously be able to be untapped with the key as well next turn. Going down to 2 cards in hand, that is a Diamond Lion. So probably seeing the commander next turn, that is 6 mana on these 2 alone. So we probably have to go after the Thran Dynamo, to be honest. And that's going to give us time. We draw into Reflecting Pool, which means we can make a land next turn, so getting down a Tricycle land is probably going to be a good idea. Don't have too much token generation here, so yeah, it's just a case of trying to slow our opponent down at this point, I think. And I'm pretty sure we're fine to do this on our opponent's upkeep, so that the beast that they get has Summoning Sickness. Floating the mana won't do much of anything for them, I don't think. Now seeing a Command Beacon from our opponent. They could have made this a copy of the Thran Dynamo, which I didn't actually account for. Would have meant sacrificing the Diamond Lion though, so I don't think that's something that they'd really be willing to do. So managing to make a land here, yeah, and they do have enough mana, especially with an Ugin. They decided to go for Ugin before the Kozilek, but yeah, being able to drop the land there would have allowed them into enough mana for the Kozilek. 1 card in hand, which they might be able to get rid of next turn before casting their commander. Exiling a card off the top gets them a 2/2 Spirit token, and they hit us for 2 with the artifact. Alright, a Blighted Woodland is... Are we going to go for the Jetmir this turn? I think we have to, because then we can maybe go Rabble Rousing next turn. Although Rabble Rousing isn't exactly incredible here, is it? But we're not going to really do anything this game, I don't think. It wasn't the best hand I kept, but it allows my opponent to get into the game, unlike the previous game at least. So we'll see what the colourless deck can do here. Throw down the Jetmir Expedition map from our opponent, and then starting to float a bunch of mana for a Kozilek maybe. Untapping the Mana Crypt with the key again. Alright, going for Jorah's Familiar first, so down to 0 cards in hand. And sacrificing the Expedition map, taking his time getting down the Kozilek, luckily for us. But I think our opponent's got all the time he needs here, because we're not going to do much of anything. If we could get down that Elish Norn, that would be excellent, because that would take a lot of mana from the Diamond Lion. Seeing an Eye of Ugin now as well, which will tap for 2 mana into the commander. Alright, and then ticking down the Ugin to get rid of the Jetmir. And then swinging in at us, that is 5, 6 and 7 damage with the non-summoning sick creatures. Takes us down to 29. Alright, and that is a Camaraderie, so Blighted Woodland. And we're one away from the Elesh Norn. I dare say we see the Kozilek next turn. Maybe should have... Yeah, I probably should have foregone the Jetmir actually. And gone for Blighted Woodland, ramp. And then we would have had enough for the Elesh Norn. I was just fully expecting my opponent to get down their Kozilek last turn, but obviously they didn't. We'll try our luck again, but I highly doubt our opponent will go for anything other than the Kozilek with an empty hand. Might be tempted by what he draws into to cast that instead. Alright, our opponent going down a mana, the Magicynth Gardens, turning into a Manifold Key. Our opponent goes down to 31 off the Lightning Bolt from the Mana Crypt, and throws out a Mind Stone before going for anything else. That was a 1 mana Mind Stone, thanks to the Joyous Familiar, of course. Oh, actually it's free, thanks to Ugin. So using Manifold Key to untap Mana Crypt, they'll float a mana every time they do that. And then doing it again with the other one. So, I mean, that doesn't really do anything until they get a bigger rock into play, because they just lose a mana from the Magicynth Gardens anyway. Could have just turned this into a Mana Crypt, that would have generated more mana. But obviously they risk multiple Lightning Bolts with that. So, sacrificing the Diamond Lion, and they will be able to get down their Kozilek this turn. So there we go. That will get them into a heap of cards, refilling their hand to 7. And their colourless artifact spells do cost 3 less, thanks to Jorah's Familiar and the Ugin. So there we see Oblivion Sower, and they managed to steal away a mountain from us. Followed by a Gilded Lotus, costs 2 mana, taps for 3, 5 cards in hand, and swinging in at us again. So that will obviously be 7 damage. And ticking up the Ugin again makes another Spirit token, and we'll activate the Blighted Woodland at the end of our opponent's turn. Okay, an Elemental Bond. I mean, this is all too little too late at this point. Just for the fun of it, we'll get down the Elesh Norn. We'll give our opponent a couple of cards in doing so, but we're not doing anything else this game. Got into some early ramp obviously, but didn't really have any means of token production into the Jetmir. So wiping out those 2 tokens will give our opponent some cards. They go up to 7 in hand before their turn begins again. Basalt Monolith for our opponent. Tapping it down for mana and untapping it with the Manifold Key. They'll do that again here, I dare say. And activating the Eye of Ugin to search for what is likely a big Eldrazi. No, it is a duplicate. Not sure our opponent really needs to worry about an Elesh Norn, to be honest. In fact, I'd be ticking up the Ugin into it personally for card advantage. But decides to cast the duplicate into it, as you would expect, so that's a 4/7 artifact creature. And we'll take 20 damage here. Alright, we get into a Cultivate way too late for that, so just going to tap out and pass the turn here. Show my opponent that I don't have anything. Alright, and our opponent respectfully going straight into the red zone here. And knocks us out, so gets his own back on the previous game where he had to mulligan down too far. So let's try another one, see if we can get some actual Jetmir gameplay in. Alright, haven't played against this one yet. Karn Legacy Reforged, and we've got some more fast mana. Turn 1 Elemental Bond is good, although going after a Tricycle land on turn 1 is probably a better idea. Again, don't have too much token generation available to us, so really just keeping the fast mana and the card advantage, hoping we can get into some. Alright, our opponent's starting things off with a Field of the Dead. We will get one of those down as well, because we're going for a 3 mana spell here in the Elemental Bond. That will get us some card advantage off our commander if we go for that next turn. A Glaring Spotlight from our opponent, also an Urza's Workshop. So that may well tap for a couple of mana at some point this game. Okay, Cultivate is tempting, but I think we've got enough mana here. We want to be... Oh, actually we can't go for our Jetmir due to the lack of colours, so... could go for Divine Visitation, I suppose. That sets us up quite nicely, and it's always a pain to actually cast the Divine Visitation. A Sword of Fire and Ice on our opponent's side of the field, so it looks like he might be setting up Voltron with the Karn, which obviously gets much bigger the more artifacts that he plays there. A Fires of Yavimaya. We can't go for the Cultivate and our commander here, so it'll just have to be a Plains into our commander. And that will cantrip thanks to the Elemental Bond, which takes us into a Garruk's Uprising. So yeah, we're still dodging all the token generation, unfortunately. I'd have it much more locked down than this if it was an actual 1v1 deck, because you want to be much, much faster than this in 1v1. Not whether there is a Ghost Quarter over there, but that will fix our colours further if they decide to go after one of our lands. Not playing anything though, surprisingly. Haven't seen any ramp from our opponent. And a Beastmaster Ascension is a payoff piece. Let's go for Garruk's Uprising first. Can draw into a card. Probably shouldn't have dropped that castle because we might get into a more relevant land. Okay, Blighted Woodland isn't it, so let's go for the Cultivate and fix our colours a bit better. And we're pretty close to activating Field of the Dead now, so we'll get token generation one way or another. Just 5 damage on the Jetmir to our opponent. And now seeing Infiltration Lens, so if we're forced to block the commander at some point, then they will draw 2 cards off that. Not able to get down their commander, unfortunately. Luckily for them, we're not getting into any token generation. We do rip a Misty Rainforest, which means we can make 2 angels off our lands, so trigger the Garruk's Uprising and the Elemental Bond, which I should trade out for the new one actually, the triple green one, although we wouldn't have been able to cast it this game, so maybe not. Drawn into Heroic Intervention and another land that produces tokens in the Kerr Keep. Let's just throw out a Tiger, making another angel off Field of the Dead. We do have protection for that land now, even if they do decide to Ghost Quarter it. Alright, and eventually get into a useless, Call the Coppercoats, but Secure the Wastes is really good. So do we get down some haste here? I think that's alright. The Fires of Yavimaya and the Beastmaster Ascension. Don't need to hold up mana for Secure the Wastes at the end of our opponent's turn because we have haste in the Fires of Yavimaya. So we'll just swing in with everything. Beastmaster Ascension going to trigger. Probably should have foregone the Beastmaster Ascension actually. That would have been 3 extra mana into Secure the Wastes, which would have been 5 4/4 angels, which would have got a bigger buff from the Jetmir. So yeah, we would have been closer to getting our opponent there, but I wanted to hold up the Heroic Intervention anyway. Okay, another game in which our opponent is unlucky, so we'll try yet again. Alright, I was sick of trying to make that multiplayer variant of Jetmir work in 1v1, so I've just built a 1v1 deck. And we're back a couple of days later, up against Atris this time. Keep this because we've got that Sylvan Library available to us. Get down the plains first because we might be able to hold on to the Beseju if we're lucky enough to get into another green source for the Sylvan Library. Our opponent throwing down a Bajuka Bog just as a tap land on turn 1. Okay, and it's a Legion Warboss for us, so we play the Beseju as a land, and we're sticking with the tactic of Sylvan Library on turn 2. Double black on the lands from our opponent, but getting down a Chrome Mox will allow him into blue, you would think. Nope, it's another black spell, so Liliana, Heretical Healer underneath that, so maybe seeing a Necropotence here. Instead it is a much slower Phyrexian Arena. We do get into at least 1 land for this turn, and it's exactly the colours we need. Yeah, I think I'm going to be aggressive here and keep all these. And then let's drop the mountain and we'll get the Legion Warboss on the go. That will start making tokens for us. And they do have to swing in every combat, so we'll get this 1-1 into the red zone. And now we see the blue mana from our opponents, so might be holding up counter magic here if they think we're going to go for the Jetmir. So we see another land. We do have a shuffle effect available to us. Our opponent going for something during the draw step. Okay, there's a Notion Thief. So I'll remove the auto yields. We certainly won't draw an additional card. Although we could go for the Beast Within onto the Notion Thief, which I think is probably worth doing so that we don't have to slow down here. So let's blow that thing up and then we can still draw the cards off the Sylvan Library. More tokens in you see a pair of goblins. Skyshroud Claim would have been nice to go for this turn. So maybe the Skyshroud Claim is something to aim for next turn. Yeah, I'm going to put the Token Producer on the top. And I'll just hope that we can get into a land next turn. So let's put the Stomping Ground on top and we'll shuffle these away. Take advantage this turn of the fact that we don't have any mana. And I'll hold up a Swords to Plowshares, but we're going for the Tricycle land. And this Goblin is immediately going to go down to the Beast token. Obviously our opponent's going to draw 2 cards every turn thanks to that Phyrexian Arena. Phyrexian Arena really slow. I don't run it in many decks, but if you get it down as early as our opponent did, then it can be really good, assuming that it actually stays in play, which it is going to this game by the looks of it. A Fairy Artisans from our opponent. Okay, so we're seeing 3 fresh cards off the top with the Sylvan Library. First of which is a Hamweir Garrison. We don't have the battlements in here because I want to be able to hit the 3 colours quite consistently. Fist of Ironwood, and the land is good as well, so yeah, let's take 8 life again against my better judgment. Throw out the forest, tap down everything into the Sky Shroud claim. And our opponent's holding up priority, so might have, yeah, I was going to say, might have a counter spell, so that is a Flusterstorm. Obviously not paying the mana into that, so the Sky Shroud claim does get countered. And yeah, we just have to pass the turn at that. We'll lose another Goblin token, unfortunately. Atris getting into another blue mana in Sunken Hollow, and there is Far and Away, return a creature to its owner's hand. It's a fused card, it's only showing us one of the abilities here. Oh, it says sacrifice a creature here, so they bounce the token, make us sacrifice the Legion War Boss. So in a Jetmir deck, we're not doing too well on the tokens, unfortunately. And our opponent deciding to swing in at us, so we'll be able to get down the Fervor and the Hamweir Garrison, hopefully. All depends on if we see a land here. Okay, there's a Rabble Rousing and a Mana Crypt, so let's go. Yeah, we can put Rabble Rousing on top. Do we need the Mana Crypt? Yeah, we'll take the Mana Crypt so that I can just get more done here. We are risking losing out here, unfortunately, especially if we're going to be tapping out against our opponent. But we'll play the Hamweir Garrison. Our opponent gets a copy of that, and then it can be the Fervor to give all of our stuff haste. And let's go for Fists of Fastwood. Well, it does put trample on our creature, but mainly it gives us 2 Saprolings. So we swing in, we'll probably lose one of our tokens. You would think the Hamweir Garrison will block one of the tokens there. And they don't lose this at the end of the turn until we play another creature. The Phyrexian Arena actually doing some work this game, thanks to how quickly they got it down, like I said. And now we see Atris hit play, so that's a 3-2 with Menace. The top pile here is going to be presented face up, so they can have a couple of lands, hopefully. I think they might actually pick the Jace. Okay, they did take the 2 lands there, so Jace hit in the bin. And they assumed that we were trying to hide better things from them. Now seeing a Sig River Cutthroat, so yeah, if we take damage here, they're going to draw a card. We'll control exactly 9 creatures next turn if we don't lose any creatures here. Yeah, the Jetmir will get 2 more creatures from the Hamweir Garrison and then 2 more from Krenko's command as well. So I don't think we can block here. That is 3, 6 and 9, including the tokens. And then if we get bolted, that's not enough to get rid of us, so we'll just try an Alpha Strike on our opponent. And like I said, we did lose some life there, so Sig drawing another card. The Mana Crypt, we get to see if we get bolted first before we look at the Sylvan Library. And we do win the flip, so we can get an additional card off the enchantment if we want to. So we see the Rabble Rousing. There's a Garruk's Uprising as well. I'm just double checking that we do get trample off this. Yeah, we get Vigilance, Trample and Double Strike, so getting down a land tapped is okay, I think. Although I don't suppose it really matters at this point, does it? Because we either win this turn or we don't win at all. So yeah, just put the Garruk's Uprising on top and pay 4 life for the Stomping Ground. Get the Stomping Ground, that has to come in tapped because we don't have the 2 life to put into it. Jetmir into play for 4 mana because we haven't cast it yet, we just have to hope our opponent doesn't have a means of countering it. The Fairy Artisans will be able to buff all their stuff because they're going to get a Jetmir of their own. But we're looking at double strike and some big hits here, so it doesn't really matter. Throw down the Krenko's command as well, and all this stuff has haste, don't forget. Yep, and there's a Swan Song, so we're going to be 1 creature shy, annoyingly. Yeah, we're getting controlled nicely here. I highly doubt we'll be able to do it now, but we'll swing in anyway, just for the fun of it. Our opponent's got Vigilance and Trample on all his stuff thanks to the Jetmir anyway, so yeah, we don't have double strike at the moment. Just 1 creature shy from getting that, and I think we might have got through for lethal there. There's 4, 5, 6 and 9 at toughness. So they just decide to block our commander. They must have done the maths and made sure that they're not going to lose here. Alright, we do get them down to 4, even without the double strike, so we definitely had them there. But our opponent's got us here. And we did lose some life from the Sylvan Library there, so Sig did draw another card. They draw again from the Phyrexian Arena, which has definitely helped them this game. Now getting down a Dark Confidant. That is 4, 5, 6, 7. Couple more creatures will get double strike. I mean, they're going wide on us here anyway. I think they're just trying to make sure of it. Getting down the Atris again. You can have a basic island. They obviously choose the 2 face down cards, which are both tap lands. So yeah, a much closer game than I thought. We were way slower than this deck wants to be. They've got a flyer here, which can trample straight through. Our 2/2, so not going to bother blocking. And there we go, just one counter spell in it, unfortunately, which is so often the case against control decks. I like the way this 1v1 deck is running much better, so we'll try it once more. Up against Prime Speaker Zagana this time with a 1-lander is an easy mulligan. Alright, and that's effectively a 1-lander as well. We're on the draw, so are we going to get into another land for the Servo exhibition and therefore switch on the Guy's Cradle? Yeah, let's risk it for the fun of it. We can get rid of... yeah, let's get rid of the Mondrak there. Sky Shroud Ranger from our opponent on turn 1. Alright, and we do manage to make another land, that's excellent. So, go for a tap land at the end of our opponent's turn. Our opponent tapping down the Sky Shroud Ranger makes a Waterlogged Grove, which they can sacrifice to draw a card, cracking a fetch as well. So 3 mana in play by the end of turn 2. Okay, I'm glad we've got the Guy's Cradle, drawing to a Tender Shoot Dryad. So drop the land, white mana, generic Servo Exhibition makes a couple of Servo tokens for us. And our opponent decides not to counter that because it's not exactly the type of spell that you want to bother countering. But that would have really screwed us up if they had, because obviously the Guy's Cradle wouldn't tap for any mana still. Our opponent gets into a Guy's Cradle of his own, 3 cards in hand, manages to make a 5th mana by turn 5, or by turn 3 even. Now I'm Mox Diamond as well, so down to 1 card in hand. They don't have a big creature unless they've got an absolute god tier hand and can get one down here. Obviously they'd refill their hand with Prime Speaker. Okay, just going for the Prime Speaker Zagana now, so that draws them 2 cards. Biggest creature in play was a 1/1. Prime Speaker Zagana has 1 power already, so going up to 3 cards in hand. Another land for us, Inverdant Catacombs, so do we want to get down our commander here? Then maybe Rabble Rouse in the turn after? I think that's fine. Not going to bother swinging in here, I want to be swinging in with more power and toughness than that, preferably at least Trample, but maybe Double Strike as well. Don't want to give my opponent the opportunity to recast the Prime Speaker either. Noteworthy that Glacial Chasm was discarded to the Mox Diamond, by the way. And our opponent cast something there. Oh, it was a Blue Sun Zenith, so up to 7 cards in hand again. That gets shuffled back into the library. And managing to make another land with the Ranger. Bouncing the Guy's Cradle, so if they haven't made a land yet, they can play it again, and they do, so that's obviously 2 mana for them. Into more ramp on the Nature's Law. Grabbing an untapped forest with that will allow our opponent into an exploration. This is like a landfall deck, but not seeing too much landfall shenanigans from our opponent. Maybe they're just using it to ramp. So back down to 3 cards in hand. Alright, there's a White Sun's Twilight, which can set up with the Guy's Cradle quite nicely as well if we want it to. Now, do we want to go for the Aurum Frostfang or the Rabble Rousing here? I think Rabble Rousing's better because we can make more tokens with that. Does entail us swinging in though, which means that they have the opportunity to recast the Prime Speaker. So we hide away 5, first of all. Okay, and putting underneath that, probably Call the Coppercoats is the best thing there. So we'll just throw that underneath. And then it's going to cost our opponent 8 mana to get down the Prime Speaker, so we've got a turn to escape that, I think. I'm just going to assume that they're going to get in a big creature next turn. So our creatures swing in with Vigilance. The Citizen tokens come into play here. We get 3 of those because we're swinging in with 3 creatures. So that means that our creatures now have both Trample and Vigilance and a +2 buff. Okay, letting go of the Prime Speaker Zagana, so maybe can flicker that. A Quicken, so they'll draw a card to that and can cast a sorcery at instant speed, which I imagine they're just using that to cantrip. They don't seem to be having too much luck getting into anything other than ramp this game. And it's a Clever Impersonator from our opponent, so might be seeing a copy of the Prime Speaker here. Yes, and that does come down as a copy of the Prime Speaker. It saw the 2/2 Prime Speaker, the original one, so enters as a 3/3. So that kills 2 birds with 1 stone. They get to put their commander back in the command zone and draw some more. And now sacrificing a shock land to the crop rotation will get another land into play. 4, 5... Not enough for Field of the Dead, I don't think. I think you need 7 for that. So Vesuva coming down as a copy of the bounce land so that they can maybe replay the Guy's Cradle here. They do have double blue available thanks to the Mox. 6 cards in hand allows them into an Uro. Obviously they sacrifice that because it has not been escaped. So allowing them to play out the Guy's Cradle off Uro's ability. 5 cards in hand at the moment. Guy's Cradle still only tapping for 2 mana. Drawing a card with the Waterlogged Grove. And we might just be outracing our opponent here. Alright, Dryad of the Elysian Grove. Seems as though they might have put way too much ramp in this deck, but maybe they're just being really unlucky. So getting down some additional lands. There is a Botanical Sanctum and a Lityara Mirror Lake, so they can make a copy of their Prime Speaker with that. Although it would be a Clever Impersonator it comes down as at the moment, so could make a copy of something else. Our opponent has way more mana than us, but yeah, sees the writing on the wall. We draw next turn a Plains, maybe not because we were going to shuffle. But yeah, we get another 6 creatures next turn, so we've got Trample, Vigilance and Double Strike on all of them, and that likely lets us go wide. Don't feel as though that was a particularly satisfying game to end the video on, so you're getting a longer one today apparently. I'll try yet again. Playing against Sig this time, and we have some fast mana which should help us accelerate quite nicely, so we'll keep that. We can go for, yeah, white and red mana here, and that will have the Sunpetal Grove coming untapped still. So we can go Mana Crypt and a Skrelv's Hive on turn 1, start making Might tokens next turn. Obviously the sooner you get down your Bitter Blossom effects, the better. And it's just a tap land from our opponent. We stand to lose 4 life a turn if we lose the Mana Crypt flip, so do have to get a move on here. There's more fast mana. Is our opponent just going to scoop to that is the problem. Don't think we really need to get it down, so I'll play around the fact that our opponent might scoop. We can hold up the Aura Mutation, but really going for Raise the Alarm here. That is a Moonsilver Key, which I think might be worth putting an Artifact Mutation onto, actually. We get 2 tokens either way, so we might as well throw some removal on there. And if we can get into a coloured source here, we should be able to get down our commander. Dodge the Mana Crypt flip again. Alright, and that's a Rabble Rousing, so might as well get that down here. Play the Sol Ring. We need white mana for the Rabble Rousing. So we've certainly got our token generation on the way here. Let's see, Swords to Plowshares underneath the Rabble Rousing is probably the best thing there. And then we'll make some Citizen tokens when we swing in with our 3 creatures and get a single toxic damage on our opponent, which I don't think really matters, but you never know. We do have Double Strike available to us in the deck in our command zone. Just need to hope our opponent doesn't have a Toxic Deluge here. Instead it is a Cloud of Fairies, which is a free spell, untaps 2 lands when it enters, and then casting a Ponder after that. So no board white from our opponent yet, no ramp either. And we go down to 36 at the beginning of our turn. Another land, please, off the top would be really good. Jeska's Will doesn't really help here. So we're just continuing to swing in 1/1s versus 1/1s and make even more Citizen tokens here. Not going to play the Swords to Plowshares underneath that, because not really bothered about exiling a Cloud of Fairies, I don't think. The fact that our opponent didn't play the Sig suggests that they're either holding up counter magic for the Jetmir, or they're looking for a board wipe and don't want to wrap their commander up in one. I won't bother with the Raise the Alarm if I think my opponent's going to wipe the board. Alright, yeah, and just scooping it up. Play another one. Playing against Azusa this time. I've got fast mana again, so can't go for a turn 1 3 visits though, so it's slightly more fair than it would have been. We'll keep. We're going to have Den of the Bugbear come into play tapped, unfortunately, because it'll have to be Sacred Foundry on turn 1. Not seeing a fast Azusa from our opponent at least, though. There is a Scoot Swarm, speaking of landfall shenanigans. Right, let's see here. We can go Rootbound Crag into the Mana Crypt. That allows us to get in... Do we go Scoot Swarm here? I think we're fine against a mono green deck, actually. I was going to go 3 visits into the Join the Dance, but we can do that next turn. We maximise the number of creatures we make this way. That is a Nissa's Triumph from our opponent, searching for 2 forests. Alright, so now seeing a Stomping Ground, let's go for the green mana for the 3 visits. We can get down the Jetmir's Garden here. Now that I've got green mana on the Stomping Ground, that will trigger the Scoot Swarm. We can shock down the Stomping Ground in order to allow us into that Join the Dance. And now slamming down the Jetmir next turn is going to look pretty good. A Yavimaya Hollow from the lands player, getting down the Azusa as you would expect. And we see the 2 forests that they searched up previously. Their forests do match, so didn't bother keeping track of those. We can get rid of those from the reveal zone. Alright, and a Beast Within is a good thing to have a hold of, so yeah, go for the Jetmir. And that buffs our tokens up quite a bit. We've got Vigilance, Trample and +2 to power. Play Den of the Bugbear will make another token. Still a couple of tokens away from getting the double strike, but our opponent scoops to that. We see that we've got Join the Dance with flashback next turn, so we can enable the double strike, which our opponent probably sees. Not likely that there's going to be board wipes and spot removal in mono green. Yeah, so that seems to be how this 1v1 deck is going to go. Either we get down a bunch of tokens and Jetmir really quickly and people just scoop, or we win really quickly, or we get controlled out of the game and the game lasts longer but we have little to no chance of winning it. So hopefully you all enjoyed this revisit to Jetmir. It was released quite a while ago and some of you are wanting to see older decks, so hopefully you do enjoy these decks and like viewing them again after a good few months or years. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.